Hi everyone, I'm Glenda with SureFit Designs, and I know lots of you already know me as Glenda the Good Stitch. I'd like to say a big warm welcome to all of you, any of you who are new, plus all of our existing customers. You know, I welcome you to this inspirational year. And what do I mean by that? Well, we've been offering you broadcasts and chats by way of helping you be very successful with your SureFit Designs patterns and to inspire you with all kinds of different sewing projects. Last fall, we did the dress kit broadcast. This past March, we did Pants Perfection. Many of you participated in that. And now we're offering you Shirt Success. And the SureFit Designs kit that I'm using is the SureFit Designs Shirt Kit. And you're going to be seeing all kinds of different designs that you can do with this particular kit. Now, if you have it, I'd like you to have it handy. I'd like you to take out the Shirt Kit instruction book and follow along. I'm going to be referencing page numbers so that when you come back and watch the replay, you'll be able to see exactly where I'm talking about. So follow along, watch, listen, and learn. Now, when you registered for this broadcast, we gave you some gifts. The first one we gave you was a design and sew along that you found in SureFit Academy, and it was for this really fun About Town tunic. Another gift that we gave you is the jacket that I'm wearing. It's a casual swing jacket. Got lots and lots of fullness to it. It's a digital fashion leaflet, and it's found in the department called Digital Sewing Patterns. All of our websites, I'm meaning the international distributors as well as myself, we have that under our shop tabs. Now, another thing is that for this broadcast, we are offering the broadcast special being the regular shirt kit combo. It's an already discounted combination of products, and if you don't already have it, you can get an additional discount off of it by using the discount code SSBDIC. So that stands for Shirt Success Broadcast Discount, SSBDIC. Just a minute, DIS, sorry about that, SSBDIS, okay? Now, for those of you who already have your shirt kit, but would like to take advantage of that discount, if you put anywhere over $100 of items within your shopping cart, and of course that's $100 US. Our international distributors obviously work in the currency of their country, but you can add that discount code and get an additional discount off of your purchases. Now, what does the shirt kit combo consist of? Well, it gives you the shirt kit, a roll of the tracing vellum, the designing stylus, a how-to DVD, and the designing book called Sew Sensational Shirts. Now, with the how-to DVD and the Sew Sensational Shirts, of course, they are DVDs, and I can already hear many of you saying, I don't have a DVD player. Well, inside the DVD case, there's a little white sticker, and that sticker tells you to go to SureFit Academy, and it gives you the discount code that you need to use to get it at 100% discount. And this designing book, it has 6 different designs in it. The DVD that's in the back of this shows you actually how to design these patterns, and the discount code is all right here for you. So we've got you covered, whether you're working on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. Whatever is handy in your sewing room, you'll be able to watch our DVD tutorials in a streaming video format. Now, another thing that we made available to you was unlimited access. In the first 2 broadcasts that we did, the dress and the pant, a couple of months after that broadcast, I then segmented the entire broadcast, put it into lessons, and moved it over into the Academy. And there was a nominal fee for you then to continue watching it. Well, we decided to include that whole process into your registration gifts. So this broadcast is going to be available until October 31st. on this same YouTube private channel, exactly where you are today. But at the end of October, it will be moved over to the Academy, and there will be no additional charge to continue watching this broadcast. So towards the end of October, you need to watch for an email from us that's going to give you the discount code to use in the Academy so that you will have unlimited access to the broadcast, again, meaning that you can watch it and replay it as many times as you need to. So another thing that's going to happen throughout this entire broadcast is question and answers. Now, again, we have our international distributors with us. We also have my office assistant, Kelly. And as I go along in the presentation, I know I'm going to answer a lot of your concerns, but if you have questions, drop it in the chat window and put the capital letter Q in front of your question so that Kelly and the distributors can identify it as a question and get it answered as quickly as possible. Then towards the end of the broadcast, we'll be opening up, bringing in the laptop, and I'll be answering any remaining questions. So this broadcast is going to be likely anywhere between 90 to 120 minutes long. I know that those of you who have participated in my chats and broadcasts know that I usually go over time, and there's just, again, so much information to share with you, and then I do want to make sure that we get as many questions covered as possible. So again, thank you so much for being here and staying with us. Have your tea or coffee ready, and I think we're ready to get going. Now, just to give you a brief overview of what we're going to cover in this entire time, first of all, we'll talk about measurements, particularly the neck measurement. Then I'm going to be drawing off the patterns for you. Then we'll be looking at the test of the shirt and how it's supposed to fit on your body. Then we'll be moving into designing. And I've invited all of you to be ready for designing because I'll be sitting at the table, you'll have your supplies ready. I asked you to download the half-scale shirt patterns so that you had something to work on along with me. And if you didn't get them downloaded, there's a link in the Show More notes that give you a link directly to free stuff that's found in SureFitDesigns.com, where you can go and get the half-scale patterns and have them ready to follow along when we get to that particular portion. And then, of course, we'll end with your questions and my answers. So, first of all, measuring. Well, I would have liked to have had somebody here to measure, but that's not really possible in today's environment. So what I had you do when you registered, I said, please go and watch this video on how to measure. And it was only barely 4 minutes long, but it went through the 8 different measurements that are required for women. And of course, if we have any men here, you don't do that last measurement, which was the full hip measurement. And you'll see why as I go ahead and work on the drawing of the pattern here. But where I would like to reference you is to page 4 in your shirt kit instruction book. Now, all of these measurements were shown to you in that short little video segment. So I'm not going to go ahead and do them now. Obviously, there's no need to. And the measurements that I'm actually going to use are from a woman who came to one of my private workshops. Her name is Diane, and she very generously allowed me to use her measurements. So that's what I'll be working with today. But I want you to think of this as your measurements when I draw off the pattern, and that how easily it's going to be to blueprint your unique body shape and size. Now, the one measurement that I would like to discuss is the neck measurement. And so one of the biggest benefits of the SureFit Design shirt kit is that you can blueprint to your neck circumference. So I'm going to give you 2 opposing examples here and show you why this is so valuable to you to get the things to fit you properly at the neckline. Think of the woman who has got a very, very full bust. generally short shoulders, and a very small neck circumference, versus the man who is a bodybuilder, very thick in the neck, oftentimes broad-shouldered, and can't get anything to button up properly at the neckline. So one of the things that I did in the measuring video is I said, put this tape measure comfortably around your neck and then give yourself a finger worth of breathing and swallowing room. So that's very important. And then you need to go to the chart at the bottom of page, what is that, page 6. So we're jumping ahead just a little bit here. I know at the top of page 6 it says to begin with the shirt back, but I want to do an explanation of this neck measurement first, and then we'll jump back and take a look at the broader explanation. So that measurement chart gives you columns of chest measurements or bust measurements, and then that's in the first row. And then if you look down to the last row, it says what should be the corresponding neck circumference. So example number 1 is the woman with a thin neck and a fuller chest. And we're going to pull up a graphic here so that you can follow along. We're going to say that her bust circumference is 40 inches around. And if you read down the column, just follow the arrowhead, in that last row, it says the neck circumference should be 16 inches around. But this woman has a 15.5-inch neck. And so if I look at the 15.5-inch neck circumference and follow it up, that's a 38-inch bust circumference. So what does that mean on the pattern? Well, let's take a quick look. It means that at the neckline, I would use the 38, the 38, the 38 at center back, neck point, shoulder point, but I would come back out to the 40 at back arm side point number 1 and back out to the 40 at back arm side point number 2. Now we'll take a look at my second example, which is a man who's got a very thick neck, and the graphic is coming up for that. So we're going to say that he has a chest measurement of 50 inches around. If we read down the column, you'll see that it says he should have an 18.5-inch neck. But we know from measuring that his neck is approximately 19 inches around. So that neckline for the 50-inch chest would be too tight on him. So if you read up the column from the 19-inch neck, it says that he would have a 52-inch chest. And so on the master pattern, what we would do is use the 52 dot for the larger neck at center back, at the neck point, at the shoulder point, but we'd come down to the 50 dot for the back arm side point number 1 and point number 2 down here. So what we're doing is we are modifying the circumference of the neck based on what that person needs. Now, if you are within only 1/4 of an inch of difference, like my measurement model Diane is, then you're just going to leave it and do your own chest circumference or bust circumference. Because with 1/4 of an inch, that could be the variable between, you know, a thin finger and a thick finger, or just how you hold that tape measure, or if you measured yourself a second time, you get a different measurement. So don't worry about 1/4 of an inch of difference. But if it goes up to about 1/2 inch of difference, then you want to change the pattern for that neck circumference. All right, so now before I start drawing on the shirt pattern, I'd like to just give you a little explanation of the master pattern, particularly for those of you who are new to SureFit Designs. So it is a master pattern, meaning you don't want to draw on this or cut it apart, because you'll be able to reuse it many times over as your body changes size. So what we've got, and I use that word size very, very loosely and liberally, because I really mean to say whatever your measurement is, because these dots that go up and out are measurement dots, and they are graded according to your body measurement. So it starts at 28 inches around, which is about 71 centimeters, and it goes on up to 62 inches around, or 157 and a half centimeters. So there's a very wide measurement range, and in very simplistic terms, all you do is mark in your measurement dot, you connect those dots together, and you end up with what I call your body blueprint, in this case, your shirt blueprint. Now, of course, I'm going to be personalizing to the body when I go and as I do the drawing, and you'll be doing that for yourself as well. Okay, now, I usually get asked the question, what is the difference between the shirt kit and the dress kit? And so I'm going to have you flip back one page to page number 5. And it's talking about the differences between the dress kit and the shirt kit. One of the major differences is the ease allotment. In the shirt kit, there's approximately 5 to 6 inches of ease. In the dress kit, there's 2.5 inches of ease, so about half. And when you go to that lesser amount of ease, that means the garment is more fitted, and particularly for women, you are going to need a bust dart. So as we look at the shirt front, there is no bust dart. There is definitely a dart in the dress kit, but not in the shirt kit. When we talk about the fitting of the shirt kit, I'll be addressing more information about the dart and why it is an important feature. And another thing that is different with the shirt to the dress kit is the armhole. We have a deep arm sigh here, which means that the sleeve that's going to go into it has a lower cap, and it's a much broader sleeve to fit into this deeper armhole. And then what I'm going to do when we get to the designing portion and when you all participate is I'm going to show you how to raise the arm sigh up on both the shirt itself as well as on the sleeve pattern, and that's reflected in the casual swing jacket that I'm wearing. This is one of the things that women comment on. For men, it's absolutely fine. But women comment and say, gosh, this is a deep arm sigh. Is there anything I can do to modify it? And the answer is yes, we can raise it up, and I'm going to show you how. Okay, so with that explanation, I would like to now go on to page 6, and starting up at the top, we are going to personalize the neck size as I've already explained if you need to, and we're going to start drawing the pattern. And so because I don't want to draw on the master pattern, I actually had an email one day from a lady who said, I drew my body out on my master pattern and I cut it apart. And oh my goodness, oh no, don't do that. So needless to say, she had to get another set of master patterns. Our bodies change throughout our lifetime. And so you want to leave this intact so that you can reuse it throughout your lifetime. So you saw what I did. I taped up a piece of tracing vellum. Now the tape I used was this totally indispensable removable tape. You definitely can get that on my website, and you'll see that when I release it, it does not rip the surface of the master pattern. So it's a very, very important thing to have. The second thing is you're going to see that I am working on the wall. And I do that, of course, so that all of you can see it and we get some good camera angles. But at home, please make sure that you're working on a table surface. I even had a lady say that she cleared off all of the photographs off of her dining room wall to put the patterns up, because that's what I did. And somebody else said, oh, I used the glass sliding door on my French windows. And I went, oh my goodness, don't do that, please. Don't work on the wall. It's going to be much more difficult for you. I've done this for 40 years, so I'm comfortable with it. But you find a table surface that's big enough for the master patterns. Okay, the other thing is I'm going to be drawing in these bright pink pens. And that's so that you all can see exactly what it is I'm doing. But at home, you're going to use pencil so that you can erase. And so my model's measurements, she's 42 inches around in her chest or bust area. Her name was Diane. You'll hear me calling that out as I go through the presentation. So I'm going to take her full chest measurement, full bust measurement, and I'm going to put it at center back. I'm going to do the same thing at the neck point and at the shoulder point and at back arm side point number 1 and back arm side point number 2. Now, you are going to be using pencil to do this. If you need to erase, you'll see how beautifully this tracing vellum does erase. And by the way, I should mention to you about the tracing vellum. We do carry this in 2 different sizes. And one of them is 24 inches wide, and it has 20 yards in the roll. And this one, you can see the difference. This is 18 inches wide, and it has 50 yards in the roll. I like to have one of each of these going in my sewing room because I'll show you exactly why. When I'm drawing off, for instance, the bodice back, the bodice front, the shirt back, the shirt front, you can see that this 18-inch wide one is a pretty good format and not have any or too much wastage on the side. But when I get over to the sleeve pattern, as I said, it's a lower, flatter cap and it's a wider sleeve, and I absolutely need to be using the 24-inch wide on that wider sleeve. So having one of each on hand is very functional in your sewing space. Okay, so if you are following along at the top of page 6, number 1, it says lay the vellum over top, and then you want to draw in the straight of grain marking. And that's this mark right here on the pattern. And you're going to make it exactly the same length as the grain line marking on the master pattern, because if your vellum shifts off for any reason, you'll be able to realign it really quickly. And let's see, I think the next mark I'm going to put in here is the center back measurement, or not measurement, it's just a line coming straight down, and we will be adjusting the hem level towards the end. But I'm hoping that you all can see these bright pink marks, because if I was to use pencil, obviously, it would not be anywhere near as visible for you. Okay, the neck size we've talked about, or the neck circumference. And for Diane, I don't need to change her neck measurement. Her actual neck is 16 1/4. And if you do take a quick look at the bottom of page 6, 16 1/4 ends between, or falls between, the 40 and the 42 number. And so I'm not going to worry about it. It's just 1/4 inch of difference, and it's not worthwhile changing. So now I need to draw in this back neck curve. So those of you who already have your SureFit Design supplies, I hope you've got your designing stylus with you, because I'm going to show you how to use it so that you can follow along here. So holding, you take yours, hold it with the words facing you. So if I was sitting in your chair, I'd be looking at it like this, and the colored side facing me. So then we're going to come down this straight edge and go around the bottom curvature here, and right above those seam allowance slots it says back neck curve. So that's the curvature that you want to use in the back neck of the pattern. And what is important when you draw this is that you get a 90-degree angle as a connecting point going into the center back of the pattern. Now, the next line to do is the shoulder line. And I am going to actually start this in pencil, and then we'll come back and evaluate it. So where I'm at in the instruction book is on page 7, and I'm now doing step number 4, which is individualizing that back shoulder width. So Diane's back shoulder width is 17 inches long. And so or wide, I guess I should say. So that's going like from shoulder bone to shoulder bone is 17 inches. But because I'm working on half a pattern, I only want half that width. So an easy way to do it is, of course, just divide it in your head if you can. And if you can't do fractions, just take your tape measure. I put the 0 on the number 17, folded the tape measure in half, and that is 8.5 inches. So I'm going to come across here, and I'm going to measure from center back to the shoulder dot that I marked, and that was actually 9 inches wide, but Diane's only 8.5 inches wide. So on the same plane as the shoulder line that you drew, I'm going to mark back 1/2 inch right there, and excuse me, I'm going to cross this off, but at home you would simply erase it because you are going to be using a pencil. And then I will come back and I will connect the neck to the shoulder point like that. And in fact, let me come in with my eraser. I'm going to show you how beautifully this tracing vellum erases. Had that been in pencil, that mark, that extended shoulder point would have come right off. All right, it erases, the paper does not go into holes. So that is step number 4. Now we're going to go on to step 5, which is doing the armhole. We're still on page 7. So I've already drawn in, marked in 2 dots, back arm side point number 1 and back arm side point number 2. So now you want to take your designing stylus and hold it with the words facing you and these 2 curves going downward. And we come on the other side of the stylus down to, let's see, where are we at here? We are on we're going to go to the second arrowhead, and it says match to back arm side point number 1 on the shirt pattern. So I'm going to take that arrowhead and I'm going to put it in to dot number 1. And I just thought of something else that I need to do, and I'm going to take you back to this step. If you visually go back to step number 4, the very last sentence says, record the amount that you lengthened or shortened the shoulder line. And I forgot to do that. So I'm going to go back. I know that was 1/2 inch. And so I'm going to write it right on the tracing vellum. I'm going to need that when I get onto the shirt front pattern. So again, another good reason to be reading the directions. Back to the armhole. Okay, arrowhead right here goes to dot number 1, and I'm going to pivot into my personalized shoulder point, and I'm going to draw around to dot number 1. Now dot number 2 is kind of hanging below the edge of the stylus, so I don't want you just to tilt like that because you'll get a little bit of a scalloped underarm. So just slide it, just tilt it gradually like this until you can get a nice smooth continuation of the line. And there you have that nice smooth curve. Now another thing that you can do, and particularly if you're one of these larger measurements, is from this position, you could just flop the stylus over and continue the curve out like this. Don't be afraid to flip and flop this designing stylus around, because you're going to find that this is one of the most functional tools that you've ever drafted and drawn with. So what we're doing, of course, here is blueprinting to your body shape and size. And again, it just is starting to develop and form your body shape. One more thing I'd like to talk about at the shoulder point before I go on is what happens when you're a very narrow-shouldered person. So I'm going to do a real exaggeration here, and I'm just going to make a pencil mark right here. That's a really short-shouldered person. But following the rules in the book, then you would take arrowhead, this one right here, the one that says match to back arm side point 1, you'd put it into the dot, and you'd pivot in to your personal shoulder point, and you'd start drawing down like that. I think you can see this in pencil. And what happens is that I'm forming a kind of inverted V here. So if you think of the front shoulder coming and sewing along here, what would happen is that it would come like that, and then you'd get this kind of, as I say, it's a big flat V shape. And as you go to sew the shoulder cap in here, the sleeve cap in here, it's going to drag on that sleeve cap because it's not smooth in here. So what you want to do is have a right angle, just like I said at the neck point, you want a right angle right here. And I'm just going to make that about 1/4 of an inch long, and then I'm going to blend. And what I would do, again, take this arrowhead, put it into dot number 1, and instead of matching right up to the shoulder line, match up to where that 1/4 inch line is. So I didn't do that dark enough. So that then, and you do that same thing on the front, and then begin this shape for your armhole. Can you see how much more pleasant? It's a smoother shape at the shoulder point than doing a sharp point like that. And so I need you to just be aware of that doesn't happen when you're drawing off your shirt pattern, because it can happen, oops, if you're very narrow. And again, so the vellum shifted off. It's so easy just to realign, because I've got that straight of grain there, and it just helps me realign this. Now you can see that I'm erasing quite a bit on the master pattern, or excuse me, on the tracing vellum, and you can see how nicely that comes off, and the tracing vellum simply doesn't go into holes or shreds. All right, so now we've done the armhole. We're going to move on to page number 8 and do the center back waist length. Now, Diane's center back waist length is 17.5 inches long. So take your tape measure, start it right at center back, and come down, and I'll see where 17.5 is, right here. Sorry, that flopped in the line of the camera view there. Now, the distance between her waist measurement and the waist guideline on the master pattern, I'm looking at that, and it is exactly 1 inch. So this is also something I want to record, is what am I doing at the waistline on the back of the pattern, because I'm going to need to repeat that on the front of the pattern. And this once again says in step number 6 on page 8, the last sentence there, measure and record the distance between your actual waist level and the waist guideline on the master pattern. Once you've done that, then you can take your tracing vellum, and you want to personalize for your body. So I'm going to shift down. Just make sure you keep the straight of grain and the center back straight, and shift the tracing vellum down like this. And keep it all nicely lined up, and then retape. And so that that doesn't slip off, I am going to just put in one more little piece of tape here to give it a little bit more security. Now I can mark in the waist measurement. And so the waist can go from 28 inches, which is 71 centimeters, up to 62, 157 centimeters. Mark in the dot that you need and connect together. Diane is 33.5, and I'm actually glad she was a half measurement number, because you want to go in between the dots right there. I've had people say, well, you know, I was 39.5, so I went to the 40, or I was 39.5, so I went down to the 39. Don't do that. If you go down, you're losing ease, and if you go up, you're gaining ease. So there's enough space between most of the dots to go and make like a half. A quarter is getting kind of tight, but when you're working in pencil, you're not going to have these big fat dots. So please go in between the dots. Now, connect the side seam. So as I start drawing and connecting here, you're going to see that Diane has somewhat of an hourglass shape. So we're coming from a wider underarm point to a narrower waist point. I am, excuse me, I am going to draw in this waist guideline. And now I need to finish off in the hemline. Now, this is our unisex pattern, meaning it sews for both men and women. If you think about a man's body, he's basically straight up and down. So when you go to do the hem level for a man, you're going to be using his waist measurement at the hemline. And so it says there, waist measurement for men. But because I'm demonstrating for a woman's measurements, I'm going to come up to this row and it says woman's fullest hip measurement. Diane's full hip measurement is 44, and there is the dot right there. So as I connect out to this hip dot, I'm going to do just a slight blending in the waistline to get that position going. Then I'll flip the designing stylus over and use a pleasing curve to go out towards her fullest hip measurement. Now you can put on a straight hem going across if you want to, or you can do a shirt tail style hem. And I'll just show you the drawing of the shirt tail style hem. Use your designing stylus, just flip it so that the curves are representative of the curves that are on the master pattern, and then we'll come across to the center back. One last thing that I need to do here is put in this dart, and it says optional, back dart, optional. I always draw it in my original pattern, then if I don't want to use it, I don't need to, just sits there as blank space, but I'm going to show you how to put it in. So it says to use your chest or bust measurement, so I've marked the 42 dot there, and I'll mark the 42 dot right there. In order to draw off that shape easily, just release the tracing vellum, and keeping that waistline level, I'm going to shift over until that dot is right on top of the waist dot, of the dart dot, and this dot is right on top of the bottom, or the lower tip of the dart. And of course, I'm keeping the grain line parallel at both the grain line and the center back. And then just use the straight edge on either your designing stylus or your line drafter to draw in this optional back fitting dart. Sometimes I put it in, sometimes I don't. It just depends on the style of garment that I want to end up with. Where are we at in the instruction book? Let's see here. So I have done on page 8. Okay, so here we are. I did step 8 on page 8, which was the hem level, and then I drew in the optional fitting dart, and then I want you to see number 9. It says add the seam allowances. And at this point in time, you can add the seam allowances, but I'm going to skip that step until I get to the shirt front, and then I'll tell you why. So at the top of page 9, we are actually starting on the shirt front. There's 2 optional ways to draw the shirt front. One is with the button extension and facing, and one is without. So let's take a look at the shirt front pattern. Here is the center front line, right there. And the next line over is the button extension, and that's of course where you would fold this facing. So there's the facing extension right there. And I'm going to just get hold of one of these garments real quickly. And this is an example of the button extension, and then inside is the facing, okay? But for testing purposes and for your initial garment, you really don't need to add on the button extension or the facing. And so what I'm going to do is just use center front as a testing position, and at the end we'll add on seam allowances to that. But you do need to start off and do your grain line with your little triangles, top and bottom, and then you put in your chest or bust measurement. So in the case of Diane, I'm using a 42 dot. Whatever your chest or bust measurement is, please use that number. So I've marked the 42 in all the way around up to the underarm. And again, taking a look at the instruction book, it's saying now to draw the center front line. So I will do that. And again, you can use your line drafter to do this if you want to, or the straight edge on your designing stylus. To do the neck curve, what I want you to do now is hold the designing stylus with the words facing you and the two curves going downward. Now, we're going to do a quick little flip, and we're going to look at the back of the designing stylus. My words are kind of fading there, but I think you can see it says neck curve. I wrote that in by hand because this curvature is an excellent neck curve for the front of your shirt pattern. We're going to find the curve. This is a little rule that I use. Find the curve on the master pattern and then slip the stylus down or up as need be to expose your dots and connect them together. What is really important here is that you have a 90-degree angle here so that when you continue the center front across, which you would for when the right sewing together with the left side and you've got a collar stand going across, you want to have a nice smooth continuation there. The next thing we need to do is the shoulder line. I know that I shortened it in the back by a ½ an inch, so I'm going to draw that in pencil. I'm going to come with the edge on the designing stylus here, and I'm going to measure back 1.5 inches. I'll mark a dot. I didn't mean 1.5 inches, excuse me. I meant a ½ an inch right here. And then I can take my pen, I'll mark that in. I've shortened the shoulder by 1/2 inch, and I've connected up to the neck point. Again, take your eraser and erase what you don't need right in there. I will just simply cross this dot off. Going into the armhole, this is front arm side point 1, and here is front arm side point 2. So I'm going to take a look at the designing stylus, and this time, again, the words are facing you, and the two curves are going downward. We come down the long curvy edge to the first arrowhead, and that says match to back arm side point number 1 in the dress pattern, but it is also match to, says, or front arm side point number 1 in the shirt pattern. So this particular arrowhead is shared between the dress pattern and the shirt pattern. So take this arrowhead and put it in to your first dot, pivot into your shoulder point, and if I was a purist there, I'd have used my right angle and made sure that that was exactly 90-degree angle, because that is important, so that again you get this relatively smooth continuation going into the other shoulder line when you're sewing them together. And then I will just finish off coming down to dot number 1. Then I need to get to dot number 2. Remember just to slide it slightly, and also remember that you can flop the stylus over to get out to the larger extensions and numbers. The next thing to do is the waist level, and that goes on to page number 10, step number 13. Now, in the back pattern, I shortened the waist, I lowered the waist down by 1 inch. So I need to do the same thing on the back pattern, or excuse me, on the front pattern. I need to make a mark here, pardon my arm and the floppy tape measure, but there's 1 inch right there. And because I lowered the tracing vellum down in the back, I need to lower the tracing vellum down in the front by 1 inch. I think the instruction book tells you to raise up, and you can do either. It just depends. So, you know, if you'd have raised up the back, then you'd raise up the front. But because I shortened the back, I'm going to shorten the front by slipping the vellum down. Again, I just keep that straight of grain, totally straight, center front totally straight, and reposition the removable tape. Then I can mark in the waist measurement number, being 33.5, right there, and I will connect the waist level, waist guideline, and I'll start the formation once again of her hourglass figure. Again, for a man, you use your waist measurement number at the bottom. For the woman, we use the fullest hip measurement a little bit higher up in the full hip area. And there's Diane's 44-inch hip. And now I'm just, whoops, I drew on the stylus and not on the vellum. There we have a continuation of her hip curve, and I come out to her fuller hip measurement. Now, were you to follow along with this exact line, that's going to nip your shirt in closer to your body. So you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can certainly straighten this out and have it just hang down a little bit straighter on your body. Think of this as I often use the word camp shirt. It's just a comfortable, casual, looser garment. And you just, you know, it's not fitted. It's not intended to be fitted like the dress kit is. The last thing to do is draw in this curved shirt tail hem there. And here's the reverse curvature for the bottom. I'm just trying to follow the contours that are provided on the master pattern. And that almost finishes off the front pattern. When I say almost, when you take a look, again, page 10, step number 14, it says add the seam allowances. Well, I'm going to jump you to number 15, and it says for consistency and accuracy, what are we going to do? We are going to take the front and lay it over the back, or the reverse. You're going to take the back and lay it over the front. You are going to make sure that your side seams are exactly the same length. You're going to make sure that they are the same shape. If not, you've been doing this in pencil. You can erase and change one of them. And so don't get hung up. I mean, maybe your pencil slipped and one of these lines is 1/8 of an inch longer or 1/4 of an inch longer than the other. And just erase it and redo it. It's that simple. Another thing you'll check is that your shoulder lines are exactly the same length. You're also going to check for right angles at center back and at center front, and at your shoulder line where the arm size seam is coming in. So check those things before you start adding seam allowances. Now, one other notation that was in the front of the book, I think it was on page 5, and I want to bring this up because I got this question very frequently, not frequently, excuse me, very recently in one of my customer emails, and she said, Glenda, I used the larger front than back because I'm like I think she said a double D or an E-cup bra shape, and she wanted to give more fullness to the front of the pattern than she had to the back, because right now the ease of about 5 to 6 inches is equally distributed between the front and the back. But if you know you're much narrower in the back and bigger in the front, what you can do is go up 1 dot in the front and down 1 dot in the back. So again, I'll use Diane's measurements as an example. If she's 42, but we want to give 1 more dot worth of ease to the front, I'd come up to the 43 dot in the front And on the back, instead of using 42, I'd go down to the 41. So consistently, you've still got the same ease amount, but you've distributed more to the front than to the back. But what happens to the shape of the side seam then? If you only do that at the underarm, this shape of the side seam is going to be a little bit more angular, and this one will be straighter, and now your side seams aren't the same shape. So what I'd recommend is that if you come up one and down one, that you do the same thing at the waist and at the hip, so that you are then maintaining the same shape of side seam. Now, once you've tested for consistency and accuracy, now you can add on your seam allowances to both patterns. I'll show you how to do that with the designing stylus. So there's a whole series of slots running around the outer edge in this designing stylus, and it's the edge of the slot that is nearest the outside edge of the stylus. And if you put your pencil lead right there, this distance is 5/8 of an inch. And so I've drawn on the seam allowance at the shoulder line, and you'd put it into the armhole. You put it on all the outer curves, or edges, I guess I should say, that you've previously drawn to add your seam allowance on. And you know, I'm going to go back to the armhole, and I'm going to show you one thing that can happen here. As you're drawing, it can flip up like this, and you don't want that to occur. So just use your seam gauge and come back and make this 5/8 of an inch. And it's not a bad idea to check randomly that you have gotten 5/8 of an inch. I've seen some people use the other edge of the slot not knowingly, and they're ending up with a seam allowance that's close to 3/4 of an inch, and you really don't want that. At center front, and this is for testing purposes only, we are going to add a 5/8 inch seam allowance all the way up and down. And then, of course, at the neckline, we also need to put the stylus in, add the seam allowance. Here's another circumstance where your seam allowance can start to flip up, and you don't want to let that happen. So just double check it. As I said, a seam gauge comes in handy to double check your seam allowances. And of course, you'd put the seam allowances on the shirt back as well. So now we are ready to move on to the sleeve pattern, and we're going to look at page 10, number 16, drawing the sleeve. So the very first thing that we want to do is put in the straight of grain marking and the same length as the grain line on the pattern, and put in your little diamond, or they're not diamond shaped, they're triangular shaped tops and bottoms, arrows. Now you're going to use your full bust measurement. In the case of Diane, this is 42, and I'm going to put that dot all the way around the top of the cap, and I'm going to bring it down the side edge, halfway down. Where's the 42? There we go. Now, before I start connecting these dots together, I just want to take you back to your neck circumference. If you made your neck circumference smaller or larger, then keep that number in mind. The example I gave you was somebody who was a 40-inch neck went down to a 38. So if that's the case, you need to use the 38 dot at the sleeve cap, and then you're going to graduate out until you come to your 40 over here. And the same thing down the other side. The person who's larger in the neck, know that larger chest circumference number that you used for the neck only. Well, you used it at the center back, the center front, the neck point, and the shoulder point. You're going to go up to that larger dot, and then you're going to graduate down until you blend into your underarm dot. So that you do that so that the sleeve has a much better chance of fitting in with the appropriate amount of ease. In this case, again, I did not change the neck, so I'm just going to use her 42 dots. So then when you go to connect your dots together, these ones I usually try to do just 2 at a time. And remember the rule, find the curve on the pattern, slip the stylus up or down as need be, find the curve, slip the stylus out, and connect your dots together. There I did the lower 3 dots, but the cap I often just do 2 dots together at a time. And then the underarm looks like this. And then one of the cross checks that I want you to do on the sleeve cap before you cut and sew it out is that I want you to take your tape measure and walk it around the cap and see how much ease you've got. Or I guess you don't know the ease yet until you compare it to the armholes. So you've got to measure your shirt armholes front and back, and then say, how much length does my cap have? And the maximum amount of ease that you want to have is about, I think I'm saying here, 3/8 of an inch. And yes, it's at the bottom of page 10, it's step number 16. And the last couple of sentences talks about ease. There should be a maximum, 3/8 to a half an inch. 3/8 to a half an inch is max. Because this is a lower, flatter cap, you don't need to have as much ease as if you have that high bell cap like you do in the dress kit pattern. Okay, the side of the pattern of the sleeve is drawn together with it's actually the hip curve that's on the designing stylus. And I'm connecting like this and over here. And I've got this wall in my way, so I'm bending the stylus here to get in and do this as accurately as possible. All right, the next thing that I need to do is put in her hem length. Now, this sleeve is intended to be a long sleeve with pleats and a cuff on it. The cuff pattern, we'll talk about those in a moment, is basically 2.5 inches wide. So if I just used your whole arm length plus added a cuff, then you can see that I'm going to have too much length in that sleeve. So I'm going to recommend that you take your arm length minus 1 inch, and that is covered on page 11, step number 17, minus 1 inch. And mark that so that if you do sew a cuff in place, you're going to end up with only 1.5 inches of ease, which is elbow bending room. So Diane's total arm length was 23 inches long, but I have to get rid of 1 inch. So I'm going to mark this at 22, right there. And then I need to take this line and shift it down to the hem level on the master pattern. So I'm releasing the tracing vellum and keep that straight of grain straight, and then just carefully shift down, keeping the straight of grain totally straight, and reposition the removable tape. And now I can finish off the bottom section of the sleeve pattern. I need to put in her full bust measurement, and then it's just a very, very slightly curved line, so I just flop the stylus over to get a little bit of a curvature there. And I need to put the 42 in here and come up and then finish this off. And I'm just going to draw this, whoops, straight, and I drew it crooked. Again, that's the benefit of number one. I drew it crooked again. Working on a flat table, everybody. Please work on a flat table so you don't have that happen. And please work in pencil so that you can erase when you have the little oopses happen. Here's the placket and slash line. There are the pleat lines because there's excess here to be pleated into the cuff. And some women, depending on how small your wrist circumference is, you might want to add a third pleat there as well. And the hem edge and cuff notes are all right here on the master pattern. So please make sure you read that. Okay, now one last thing. What do I need to add? And I bet you're guessing it. It is seam allowances, and I do need to do that all the way around. I'm not going to take the time in this broadcast to do that, but you've seen me do it, so you know how to do it. The next thing that I would like to talk about are the accessory pieces. So I'm just going to slip the mannequin away out of the line of vision, and I'll bring her back in a minute, but we want you to be able to see the accessory pieces here. And there is a flat collar, and we'll be showing you that in a finished garment in a moment. This flat collar does not require the collar stand. When it's flat, it means flat. It lays against your chest area, your upper neck area. So this is the collar stand. So if a man was wearing a traditional dress shirt, putting on a tie, he would want to have this collar stand there. That's also a pattern piece that is the perfect shape for your mandarin or stand-up collar. Here's a short pointed collar and a long pointed collar, and these two collars are designed to stand on the shirt collar stand, okay? And here's the breast pocket. It comes in 4 different styles of shapes at the bottom, and here's the flap if you want to use it. Again, we've got different shapes of the flap. This is the woman's cuff for the sleeve. It's shorter because we typically have narrower cuffs than men or less circumference, and a man's cuff is longer there. So you will use your chest or bust measurement when drawing off the cuff and when drawing off the collar patterns. So those are the accessory patterns, and once you have got your blueprint done for your body, now it is time to test your pattern. And so I've brought the mannequin back into view, and we've got a very, very simple shirt that's sewn here for the mannequin. I'd like to just look at some of the aspects of this and tell you what to watch for and what to expect in your shirt pattern. Number one, in your test shirt, well, please don't sew it out of muslin, but I know some of you, that's what you test in. I personally don't care for muslin. I think it wrinkles terribly. It stretches with body heat. It doesn't press out nicely. And my preference is to use a cotton broadcloth, or a cotton poly fabric. It's nicer on your body, and it's more pleasant to look at. And you know, sometimes you can get it in the United States. Here we have a store called Joann. They have regular coupons, and you can usually get their cotton poly, which I believe is called Symphony broadcloth, and get it on a discount. Now, please, no collar is necessary for your shirt pattern. What is necessary for the test is that you stay stitch your neck edge and that you clip to the stitching. I think you can see that I've got these little clips, and they're opening up so that it fits on the neckline. If you don't clip to the stitching at the neckline, you'll get weird pull lines here at your shoulder, making it look like the shirt doesn't fit you properly. At center front, remember I added a 5/8 inch seam allowance. I did that on both sides, and then I added a stay stitching line at the 5/8 mark on both sides, and then you're going to lay one line of stitching over top of the other and pin it closed, or use those little like quilting clips to clip it closed. Your shoulder line should look nice and smooth. You're looking for the armhole seam to sit pretty much at the upper portion, the top edge of your shoulder bone. You're also looking for the shoulder line to go right down the middle of the fleshy part of the top of your shoulder, right here. Now, I want to point out this sleeve pattern. Notice that as this is hanging, there is a diagonal fold on this sleeve. When you take a look at the casual swing jacket I'm wearing, it's not as obvious because of the print, but I also have that diagonal fold right here. That is absolutely indicative of the sleeve pattern for the shirt pattern. Why does it have that fold? Well, it's because it's got a low cap, it's because of the breadth of the sleeve, and it's because it does not have an elbow dart. If you want a higher cap to help remove that fold, then you're looking more at our dress kit pattern, which has that high bell cap. And you'll get way, way less of a diagonal fold here. But this comes because this is an, call it or think of it as a rectangular straight sleeve pattern. And our arms don't hang straight down the side of our body. Our arms typically, when relaxed, hang with a forward pitch. And that's what causes that diagonal fold. So you can expect that. And as I say, if you don't like it, then you have to start modifying the pattern and adding cap height. Also for your test shirt, you may or may not want to put the cuff on. That's your choice. But one thing that you are going to see, and particularly you ladies with a full bust, you are going to see a diagonal line coming from the side seam up to your apex. Why do you see it? Well, you see that because you have a bust. The bigger your bust, the more dominant and predominant that diagonal fold will be. So what is your option? Your option is to actually put in a bust dart. And I want to show you what happens when you put a bust dart in to your shirt front pattern. Look at how beautifully that side seam hangs. We've removed the diagonal line and we've put in the bust dart. Now, one of the videos that I asked you to watch prior to this broadcast was how to add a bust dart to your shirt front pattern. You'll also find directions for that in your shirt instruction book, and it is your choice whether or not you add the dart or not. Remember, again, this is a casual shirt. Putting a dart in is going to give you even a little bit more ease because you've got to add length and width to accept that dart. But again, this is supposed to be a casual shirt. So, are we ready for some designing? Let's go over and take a look at some of the garments that I have on display here. First of all, we'll take a look at this lovely royal blue dress. And what we've got, I'll lift up the drape. There's the shirt kit on the top, and I've used the skirt from the dress kit on the bottom, and I just simply took the waistlines and lined them up one against the other and cut it all as one in a shift or a chemise style of dress. Then I've put this pretty drape over the front, and this is found on Fashion Leaflet number 9, I believe it is, which is the draped front neckline. I show the draped front neckline on a blouse that you've done with the dress kit, but it can easily be adapted to the shirt kit pattern. Let's take a look at some of the other garments now. Here is a blouse that is, it's called the Go Everywhere blouse. And this is also a design and sew along. It's found in SureFitAcademy.com. This is the one that I showed you that's got the button extension and the facing all in one. We'll also see that it's got the flat collar. And this is what I was saying about the flat collar pattern piece. It does not need the collar stand. And I've put on a 3/4 sleeve with this little inverted V at the sleeve. If I can grab that open, it's like a little vent at the bottom of the sleeve. Another variation of this Go Everywhere shirt is this camp shirt that I've done. You can see here's an example of where I straightened the side seam. Totally straight, no need to have it shaped into the waistline. This has got the flat collar as well, but in this case I sewed the facing on because I wanted the seam allowance that gave me access to the seam so that I could insert the piping. And I also piped the short sleeve. Another design in Sew Along that's pretty reminiscent of the shirt pattern is this. It's called the long tail big shirt. And you can see that it's shorter in the front and has the longer tail in the back. I did a pleat down the back. I did a nice yoke across the back. And you see the traditional style of placket. There's the collar stand right here and the short pointed collar. For the sleeve, I did it 3/4. 3/4 is my favorite. You've heard me say that before. And a sewn on turn back cuff. We also have a traditional style shirt for the man. And oftentimes, you know, doing the difference between a man's shirt and a woman's shirt, with the exception of that dart, is just the fabric choice. And in addition to that, this is buttoned, let's see, left over right, whereas women button right over left. I've put the breast pocket in place. It's got the collar, collar stand, the long sleeve, pleats going into the cuff, and of course finished off with the cuff. You can also take your shirt kit and make a variety of jackets. So here I've got a trench coat. I've done the shirt kit on the top. I've used the skirt pattern from the dress kit. Again, aligned the two together at the waistline. I did a sew-on facing so that I could pipe it. I've done the collar stand, the long pointed collar on the back. I've done a pleat down the center, the belt, and I've got a over-the-shoulder yoke. And this sleeve, it's a straight down sleeve with just a tab. Everything has been piped for coordination, and it is completely lined. Another more casual jacket, and this is done out of Pendleton wool, and I've done a bright red lining on here. This is the flat collar as well, no collar stand. It's kind of a bomber style jacket, and I've pleated into the hip or waistband. And we can get really, really casual with the hoodie jacket. This is a reversible fabric knit and just big patch pockets. There's the hood. And this actually comes out of the So Sensational shirt book that I showed you at the beginning. That's the design book that's included in the shirt kit combo. Here is a cargo jacket. This would look great on either a man or a woman. I did this one for myself out of a bottom weight twill. And this is a digital sewing pattern, a digital fashion leaflet, and it's in our category called digital sewing patterns. Again, you've got your two breast pockets, the cargo pockets at the bottom, and I did a 3/4 roll-up sleeve. Another very casual jacket that would be great in an air-conditioned environment is it's just a single button at the center front. Everything is left open. Look great over a simple summer dress when you want to stay a little bit warmer in air-conditioned restaurants and the like. A simple V-neck, no collar, and a wide 3/4 sleeve. So those are some of the shirt styles and of tops, and I showed you some jackets and coats. Now let's look at some more blousey things. This is a design also out of So Sensational Shirts, the designing book, and here center front has been cut on the fold, and it is the crossover shoulder with that little tab. That's the back shoulder coming over to the front. And I just put on self fabric for like a ribbing effect at the bottom. This forest green blouse is also out of So Sensational Shirts. This is one of the easiest hidden plackets that you're ever going to do. It's literally just a separate piece of fabric, pattern piece that's sewn on to the front, and then this overlaps to create the hidden placket effect. If you've ever done hidden plackets from commercial patterns, you know that it pleats in and out and in and out and in and out, and it kind of gets really confusing. You're going to find this really super simple to do. This blouse is kind of a combination of the shirt kit and the dress kit. Again, from the Sew Sensational Shirts book, you'll see how to do this big pleat at the side, this big flange. But this shawl collar is done from the shawl collar directions that are in the dress kit. So one of the things that you're hearing me say without really saying it is how flexible our entire SureFit design system is, and that you can really mix and match pieces to extend your wardrobe and do lots of different designs. This is also a digital sewing pattern, and this is from the shirt kit, of course. It's got an asymmetrical style of scoop neck. I did an angular design cut here. Once I cut the pattern, I then opened it up and added extra space for these pleats that I've put in place, and I finished it off with self-ribbing. And we've got a couple of About Town tunics. I showed you this one very quickly at the beginning, and this is called, as I say, the About Town tunic. A little easier to see the design, I think, in this red and black one. It's got a center front seam, it's open from about the waist down, and it's got a beautiful soft drapey collar on it. This is called a design and sew along, and those designs are found in SewFit Academy because they're all video lessons on how to draw the pattern as well as how to sew it together. This is another example of a design and sew along, and this is the raglan sleeve that is done from your shirt kit, and I put that pretty little V-tab on the front. You can really see the raglan design since I contrasted the fabrics here, and down the center of the sleeve I show you how to put in an inset godet. Again, these are design and sew alongs. And another design and sew along that I really enjoyed filming and putting together for you was the split collar neckline. And in this red and black one, I split the collar right here on the left-hand side, and on this gray one, I split the collar on the the right-hand side. This, I know it looks a little floppy on the hanger. It's a very, very soft knit fabric, exceedingly comfortable to wear. And then I've done a little combining again, and this is the shirt kit on the top, the dress kit skirt on the bottom. This was our newest fashion leaflet this summer, one of the new ones, and it's called the Simple Summer Shirt Dress. And of course the shirt is on the top, and I've done a cut-on kimono style of sleeve, and I scooped the neck a little bit, and I gave you 3 or 4 different options of ways to treat the neckline, and you could do the reversible belt if you wanted to. Very simple dress done from your shirt pattern. Now, the jacket that I'm wearing is the casual swing jacket. Again, this was one of your gifts for attending the shirt broadcast today. You can see that I've done this out of a pretty floral fabric. It's exactly the same as what I'm wearing, the longer tail at the back. And this is the design that we're all going to sit down at the table and design together. So what I'd like to mention to you is all of the supplies that you are going to require to do this particular design. First of all, you are going to need your designing stylus, the designer's companion, some tracing vellum, some pencils, graphite, and if you have your colored pencils, great, an eraser, a ruler, or your line drafter. You're going to need paper scissors or a rotary cutter. Some removable tape is absolutely essential. Also remember that you need to have available the half-scale patterns, the shirt back, the shirt front, and the sleeves. And one of the other things that I hope you've downloaded are the directions for the casual swing jacket, because we're going to be following along with them. So please make sure you've got all your supplies ready, and we're going to go right into designing. We're going to begin on the shirt back half scale pattern. Well, I guess I really should have called this about a quarter scale pattern, because I know it's smaller than a true half size of the real pattern. But I wanted to make sure the image of the shirt would fit on paper that you could print out at home. But you're going to have the experience of designing the garment, this casual swing jacket, and I also want you to have some fun doing this. I'm going to go relatively slowly, but if you do get behind, don't worry about it. You can always come back and watch the replay and make sure you do this project. I designed it so that you would have this experience. You'll learn about pivoting, you'll learn about changing the arm side and the design of the shirt pattern in general. So let's all have some fun doing this. As I mentioned, you are going to need the directions for the casual swing jacket, which was one of your gifts. And we're going to start on page 1, and it says, number 1, trace a copy of your shirt back pattern. So that's what this is your copy. And then number 2, it says to lower the neck point a 1/2 inch. And that's the neck point right here. We're going to lower it on the shoulder line. Now, because I'm working on about 1/4 of a scale here, I'm going to come down almost 1/4 of an inch. So we don't want to use full dimensions on this smaller pattern. Then what you will do is take your designer's companion, and you know what, I'm just going to freehand this. You've often seen me do that to get the curve going. And let's see, what curve do I want here? That one works pretty well, like this. And I'm going to do this in colored pencil so that you can really follow along. So that's step number 2. Step number 3 says draw the center back length, approximately 28 inches. Well, that's what I did it for myself, and I'm 5'4". The whole objective here is to get the back of this jacket hanging below your buttocks. So if you can have somebody measure you from your cervical bone at the base of your neck down underneath your backside, and you decide how long you want it. On this half scale pattern, let's just draw this down about another 1/2 inch, because that's all we've got left in paper here. So that's step number 3. Step number 4 is to raise the underarm up 1 inch. Now, why are we doing that? Well, as I said before, some people don't like how deep the underarm is on this shirt pattern. So this is an option for you. And also, I just want you to see how flexible you can be with all of your SureFit Designs patterns. On this pattern, we're going to come up 1/2 inch. On your real pattern, you'd come up about 1 inch. And then, again, I will freehand this, and then I'll come back with the designer's companion, and let's just blend that in to the existing armhole. And now step number 5 is we're going to be drawing the curved hem and the side seam. And so from here, I just kind of decided how far up I wanted to come on the side seam. On this half scale pattern, it actually ends up being about 4.5 inches long. So I'm just using my little ruler, and I'm going to mark at 4.5. But on your full scale pattern, again, here, if this is your waist level, you decide how long you'd like to have it on your side seam. But you're attempting to make some drape coming down and have this center back portion cover your backside. So then I'm going to connect the underarm point to the waist dot. It'll just be in a straight line. And let's see if the designer's companion will do this. I think that curve is pretty appropriate right there. And I'll flop this over to finish going into the side seam. Now on my real garment, on this one, my side seam ended up being about 14 3/4 long. Again, you have lots and lots of options. You can make it as long as you want to. And now step number 6 is we're going to draw some slash lines. And we want to draw one of them going straight up to the middle of the shoulder line. I'm going to use a different color here. So I'm just visually dividing the shoulder line in half. And then I need to come down to the hem level, and I'm just going to make this slash line parallel to my straight of grain marking. So I've just used my line drafter to make that long line. Now, this point at the shoulder line is going to be a pivot point. So I'm going to put a little piece of tape over top. Then I'm going to take the rotary cutter and I'm going to cut away some of that excess paper right there. And now, you know what, I'm going to use my little paper scissors to do this. The next step is to clip in to that pivot point like this, and then we're going to cut all the way down through the hemline. So before I spread this open, let's review and catch you up to what I've done here. Lowered the neckline about 1/2 inch. On this pattern, a little less than 1/4. Reshaped that. I extended the center back down. I added 1/2 inch because that's all the paper I had. Then I did a curved type of hem coming up to the side seam. And I raised the underarm up 1 inch on a real pattern, 1/2 inch on this pattern, reshaped the armhole, and then joined the side seam. Now I've added a slash line, so I'm going to spread this open. So once again, let's take a look at the directions. Step number 6, I've added the slash line, and the third sentence says, cut and spread the hem open at least 3 inches. So because we're spreading this open, I need to back the opening with a piece of tracing vellum. That's why I asked you to have some scraps on hand, scraps of your tracing vellum. And I'm going to stabilize this one side, and then I'm going to spread this open on this half scale pattern. I'm going to do it open about 1.5 inches. So about like that. Okay? And I'll add some more tape, get it taped down securely. And now what you need to do is true the hemline. So you've got a bit of a jog from here up to here. So I'm just going to, again, I'll pencil this in easily. Take a look at it because I'm working in pencil, easy enough to erase. And let me get my designing stylus over here and connect this curvature. And that looks pretty good, and I will just blend it like this. This junction right here, you want that to be a 90-degree angle. So that really does the back of the pattern, with the exception of one thing, and you can see in step number 7, it says to add your seam allowances. So you would use your designing stylus and add your 5/8" seam allowances all the way around, and center back is cut on the fold of the fabric. So that was pretty easy to change the design of the back. I hope you agree. Let's go on to the front. I'll move that one out of the way, get this ready to go. So we've got our front pattern now. And I'll flip the page over in your instructions. Please turn to page 2 and trace a copy, just like we did on the back. So we're using the half scale pattern to represent your traced copy of your shirt front. Because I lowered the neckline on the back, I need to lower the neckline on the front the same amount. So that's approximately a skinny 1/4 inch is what it is. So that was step number 2. And then I'm going to reshape this into the front neckline. Just use my designer's companion to true that curve up. Step number 3 is draw a straight design line from the new neck point to the lower center front position. Now, the lower center front position means how far do you want this center front below your waistline? I don't remember exactly what mine was, but I bet it was close to 7 or 8 inches long in the front, because ultimately what I want is a smooth curvature going from the front, blending at the side seam, and then angling down to the center back. So on this pattern, the half scale pattern, let's just mark this down 1/2 inch. I know that the proportions aren't exact, but for the sake of learning how to do it, this will work just fine. And so what that is saying to do, draw the straight design line. If you look at the 3 little illustrations underneath, it's the first illustration, and it has a number 2 at the top going down to a number 3 at the center front. So I need my line drafter to do this. I'm going to be drawing from the new neck point to my center front position. So that creates this V formation that I had right here. Now, one thing that you may or may not want is your neck point as low as I did. I did this 1/2 inch down on my shoulder seam, but if you wanted it to stay right at your regular neck point, that would be fine too. Again, remember, with Sure-Fit Designs, you just have so many options, and that's a couple of ones that you can do right at your neckline. So there's the center front position, and that was step number 3. So step number 4 is to do the raised armhole again. And here we're going to come up 1/2 inch and take the designer's companion and just reshape. When I use this designer's companion on this half scale bodice, you're actually going to be using your designing stylus on your full scale pattern. Then the next step, let's see, where are we at here, is to draw the side seam length exactly the same length as the shirt back side seam length. So in the real pattern, it was 14.5 inches or 14 3/4 inches long. In the half scale pattern, it is 4.5 inches long. So let me get my little ruler all set up here at 4.5, which is right there. So what this does is establishes where I'm going to connect like this, okay? And so again, I think I might be able to do this with the designer's companion. Let's just see. No, that curve isn't long enough. So I need to use the designing stylus, and I'm going to curve like this. Now you want to be cognizant of your 90-degree angles and where they're appropriate. Sometimes it's not always that important. Like at the shoulder line, you're not going to be able to get an exact 90. And here, you're not going to be able to get an exact 90 either because it starts to swing downward. But when you come into the side seam, yes, you will want a 90-degree angle there because that's going to continue on and connect down with your back side seam. So let's see, where are we up to? I've completed all the steps, I think, on the first illustration. And so that was up to step number 6, which was drawing the pleasing curved hem on the front. So a quick review: drop the neckline so it's consistent with the back. Draw your new center front line at an angle to be whatever distance you want it to be at your center front, to come down over your tummy. Measure from your waist over your tummy. See how long that is. Then raise up the underarm 1 inch. And this is also a place, by the way, where you should have a 90-degree angle, is right there at the underarm. Retrue the existing armhole. Draw the side seam exactly the same length as the side seam on the back of the shirt. And now we are ready to go on with step number 7, which is draw 3 slash lines as illustrated and label as 1, 2, and 3. So if you take a look at the second illustration on that page, step number 1, I'll do this in green so that you can see this, is coming from the almost the neck, well, let's call it the neck point, and at the hemline, I'm going to come in about 1/2 inch. On your real pattern, that would be about 1 inch. And then I will connect from that point down to that position. And I'll do that in green so that you can see that. Slash line number 2 is just dividing your shoulder space in half and coming straight down to your hemline. And then slash line number 3 is going to come from your underarm point. Come in about 1 inch and then just go straight down into your hem level. And those green lines are now your slash lines. Again, I'm going to have some pivot points here, so I'll put a piece of tape over top to stabilize and one at the armhole area. I got a little fold in the tape. There we go. Now I need to do a little trimming of this paper to remove my excess bulk here. So I'm just going to use my rotary cutter and let's see, I need to trim at the bottom here too. So I'm going to just follow along on my curved hemline area. Now I can remove these pieces. And now it's time to cut open to your pivot points. So I'm using my paper scissors and going right up to that pivot point. That was at the neckline. I'm going up to the pivot point on my shoulder line, and I'm going up to the pivot point at the side seam. Now it's easiest for me demonstrating here just to use my rotary cutter, and I'm going to cut down through the hemline at slash line number 1. Here is slash line number 2, and here is slash line number 3. So I've cut them all, but left them connected at their respective pivot points. Now we need to start spreading these open. And the directions tell you how much. So the first thing you need to do is back your opening with tracing vellum. And so that's, again, why you need to have, at least your 24-inch wide tracing vellum, because when you do a big design like this, you have to put a big enough piece underneath for your backing to really have enough space to then be drawing afterward. So the first one says, if I look at my third illustration there, it says, spread the first slash line open 4.5 inches. So I'm going to do this on this illustration, an example, about 2.5 inches. So that's pretty good. That's a little bit wider than 2.5. I'm doing it at the hem level. And we need to tape that one down. Then the next one, on slash line number 2, it says to spread that one open 2 inches, which is about 1 inch on this practice pattern. So 1 inch, I went too far there. Let's bring this back. There's about 1 inch for that middle one, and tape that down. And then the last one, it says spread open 6 inches. And that's because we're going to give lots of flare at the side of this casual swing jacket. So that would be about 3 inches on this half scale pattern. And you don't need to add that much flare if you don't want to. Again, keep in mind, you can just flare these open as much as you want, but I wanted lots of pretty drape. I knew that I was going to use very soft knit, drapable knit to do this. So that's what the shirt front now looks like of this casual jacket. Now the next thing is you have to blend your hemline. And so again, I'm just going to pencil this in, and I would just pencil it in on my real one too, because I want to make this as smooth of a circular kind of hem, a curved hem, as possible. I need a little bit more tape down in these pieces here at the hemline. But you're going to lose some points and you're going to gain some points here. Just depends all where your slash lines spread open to. Let's see, that one's taped down. We'll tape this one down again. Okay, so then I need the designing stylus. And let's see what we come up with here. So that might be just, oh, that's pretty good, but you can see how I'm bypassing that little corner. It'll be a lot more dominant in your full-size pattern. And here's another little corner that's being cut off. That's absolutely okay. And there's another little corner that's cut off. So now you have your completed curved hem on the front. And last step to do, it shows it in the fourth diagram, is to add in your 5/8 inch seam allowances. But because it's circular, I made it a very narrow hem. I think I only used basically maybe a 1/2 inch here at the hemline. 5/8 where all the seams are going to be. And that's because I knew that I was just going to turn it up once, the knit doesn't ravel, and then I actually used my cover stitch machine. And I'll show you that in a minute. But the next pattern that I want to go on to is the sleeve. And what are you going to do with the sleeve design? So let me move this one out of the way and get a clear working space here. And there's our supposed to be half scale sleeve pattern. It really isn't exactly half scale, but again, you're going to get the information that you need for doing the design. So right now we're on page 3 of the instructions. Number 1, trace a copy of your sleeve pattern. There it is, just off your tested garment that you know is your size and fits well. Number 2, raise the underarm up 1 inch. So for example, it's 1/2 inch. Do that on both sides, and then freehand to see it. And then let's see if the designer's companion will work here. Absolutely does. It's a perfect little curve to raise the underarm up. And again, you're raising the underarm up on the sleeve because we raised it up on the front and back of the pattern. Now, the hem level. How long do you want your hem? How do you want it finished? I love my 3/4 length sleeves, and so I just said, okay, if this is my whole arm length and my elbow area is about right there, I went from my elbow area to my hem and I just divided it in half. There's not any heavy-duty mathematical calculations to do that. Then I just drew a perpendicular line to the grain line here, and I just took it straight across. So now I have my hem level, and then I brought the sides of the sleeve in. I think I brought it in about 3/4 to 1/2 inch, but it shows on the first illustration there, me bringing that side seam in. And then I did a slightly curved line going up to the new underarm point and to the new hem level. And I need the big designing stylus to do this. And of course, you would add on your 5/8 inch seam allowances. And that's basically all there is to designing the sleeve for this casual swing jacket. Actually, you know, I don't want to forget this. There's one more piece that you should design, and that's the back neck facing. Because I decided that I wanted a facing on this rather than just turning the edge over on the back. But let's take a look at what I did here. I'm going to pull this, my hemline, up into the view of the camera here, and I'll take that out of the way so that you can see this. There, let me get a little pencil pointer here. Those double row of top stitching right there, I hope you can see that and my head's not in the way. That was done with my cover stitch machine. And then I did my best to pivot at the corner with the cover stitch machine, and I just went around the entire hem. And when you look at the inside, it's a raw edge, but because it's a knit, it's not going to ravel. And if you don't have a cover stitch machine, don't worry about it. You could use twin needle top stitching. You could do 2 rows of regular needle top stitching on there. So you have some options, but at the back, I wanted the back neck curve. So the back neck curve, I wanted it faced. And so that's why you've got the little illustration on your sheet to draw the back neck of this casual swing jacket. Well, I know a lot of you watching today already have your shirt kit, and this has given you lots of stimulus and ideas that if you haven't dived into it before, now is the time. But those of you who are new to SureFit Designs may have watched this broadcast to see if it was something that you wanted to start doing, which is fitting and sewing, of course, with SureFit Designs. And if you do, for the shirt broadcast special, we are offering you the regular shirt kit combo. And a quick review of that shows you that it's going to contain the shirt kit, of course. You're going to get the Sew Sensational shirt book, you're going to get the how-to DVD, a designing stylus, and a roll of 20-yard vellum. But also please remember that we have an additional discount for you so that when you get to your shopping cart, please make sure you add SSBDIS, and that will give you an additional discount off of the already discounted regular shirt kit combo. If you spend over $100, again, use that discount code SSBDIS and get your discount. Okay. We're coming to the end of the broadcast, and it's time now for me to answer questions that didn't get answered throughout the presentation. So we need a moment or two to clear my table and bring in the laptop. And while we're doing that, please go ahead, put the capital letter Q in front of your questions and get your questions entered into the chat window. Thanks so much for your patience while we got set up for your questions. You know, one of the questions I received was, Glenda, are you going to show us how to do the jeans jacket during this broadcast? And the answer is no. It's because I chose to show you how to do the casual swing jacket. I wanted to make sure you understood how to raise the arm side on both the front and the back, as well as on the sleeve. Now, obviously, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. But some people like a shallower arm side depth, and that's why that particular leaflet came into existence. And it works really well, but you don't have to do it if you don't want to. But in terms of a jeans jacket, I would like to let you know that our South African distributor, Elsa B. Hearn, about this time last year actually started doing design and sew-alongs, and she has a fabulous jeans jacket sew-along. She did it with the dress kit, but it could be easily adapted to your shirt pattern. And in honor of our shirt broadcast right now, Elsa B has got a brand new design and sew along, and it's called the Bomber Jacket. We're bringing up a picture here to show you what Elsa B looks like in her bomber jacket. And it's just so cute on her. And where this is all based from is the Sew Sensational Shirts designing book. And on the front cover, we have a hoodie jacket. And this is one that I designed. Well, Elsa B's gotten rid of the hood, gotten rid of the pocket design that I did. And she's actually showing you in this design and sew along how to put on a traditional bomber jacket, ribbed neckline and collar onto it. As well, she's going to show you how to do the welt pocket all in one piece, and she's going to give you the option of using a lining or not. So I know there's going to be lots of great information for you. And where you're actually going to find this bomber jacket design and sew along is on Elsa B's newest website. It's called SureFitAcademySA.com. So the SA stands for South Africa. And if you go there, you'll see that the bomber jacket registration is now open. And since you're participating in this broadcast, Elsabe has offered everyone a 20% discount off of the regular purchase price, which is $20. And all you need to do when you go to purchase it is put in the discount code SSSFUN. Again, we should have a graphic up there showing you that code and the proper address to go to. And I'm going to show you what my fabric's going to be like for this bomber jacket. Elsabe actually sent me this, and it's a really, really pretty piece of paisley, kind of done with muted blacks and charcoal colors and a beautiful silver running through the paisley. And then I got this great separating zipper that's going to go down the center of the bomber jacket with the silver teeth. So I think it's going to look really great. And then I also have a gray heather lining in a knit fabric that I'm going to put into it because we're going into fall and winter here. So I know I'm going to need the lining in it. So hopefully that's going to be my very next sewing project. And I don't want that fabric to fall off the table there. And as soon as I get it done, I'll post pictures of it. And when you get yours done, make sure you send your pictures to your distributor or post them in our Facebook group. About, 2 or 3 days ago, for all of you who had pre-registered for this broadcast, we sent out a questionnaire that said, do you have any questions that you would like Glenda to answer for you? And I'm really glad we did that because a number of questions came in and I was able to group them into questions on the front, the back, and the shirt sleeve. And so rather than taking a lot of time scrolling through the chat window here, I've grouped together the questions and I would like to answer some of these for you because they may be concerns that you had. Now, one of the first questions that I got was on a hollow neck, not a hollow neck, a hollow chest and a small neck. And she called it a narrow neck, but I think she meant a small neck. And so I've put up here on my table, if we can go to our upside down camera here, I'm going to show you the answer to that. First of all, for the small neck, you will have already chosen your neck circumference based on the measurement that you did. I showed that right at the beginning of the broadcast, how to measure your neck, how to stick a finger in, and to get some breathing room in there, and then how to choose your appropriate chest or bust measurement size. So that already, you would have already accommodated for however narrow your neck is or thick your neck is when you start on page 6 of the instruction book. And then the other question that was really relevant and came in about 3 times was, what do I do for a hollow chest? And again, I do believe that the question was referring to a narrow chest. And so you're going to measure between arm crease to arm crease and take that measurement and divide it in half because you are working on half a pattern. And then you measure from the center front over to the armhole. And if you need to, all you're going to do, I'm just going to do this in kind of this red-orange pencil color here. All you do is scoop the armhole in. And where you're going to find directions for that is in our Learning Center. Now, the website address for our Learning Center is SFD, for Sure-Fit Designs, learningcenter.com, and you will go to the general category that's on shirts, and then go to S.8.1. And the name of that video is Refining the Fit for the Dress Shirt Armscye, Modifying and Scooping the Armhole Curve. For those of you who are new to Sure-Fit Designs, our Learning Center is absolutely chock full of all kinds of references and resources for you. So if you haven't gone there yet, I really, really encourage you to do that. Another thing that I want to mention in terms of the armhole and it may feeling to be big on you is that when you go to test your shirt pattern, please make sure that you test it and put a sleeve in place. Now, the reason I'm saying that, if we could go to camera 1, please, I just want to show this fold that will happen in the armhole right here. If you don't have a bust dart, remember I showed you that before when I was demonstrating the testing of the shirt. When you don't have a bust dart, you do get a fold here. You are likely going to get a fold right there. That is to be expected on this shirt pattern. But if you test it without the sleeve in place, needless to say, this gap is going to show up. But when you put the sleeve in, this is more of the look that you're going to get. And again, without a bust dart, you can expect that that is going to happen. So please put your sleeves in place when you go to test the pattern. And then if you are a fuller bra cup size, like the C's, D's, and I've got a lady here in the States who is a G, and she said, well, what do I do? Well, you have to put the bust dart in. And one of the things that I gave you in your registration confirmation information, and it came in from Martha to you, is that there was a link to a video, and that video was how to add the bust dart to the shirt pattern. You will also find that information on, I think it's page 13 of the Dress Kit instruction book. So there is definitely lots of help to get that bust dart put in place when you've got a fuller bust. Now, another set of questions that came in was on the back of the pattern. And so that woman said that there was actually a couple of women that said, I'm finding that the back of the shirt is too tight. Well, I have a suspicion that maybe she just didn't measure the back of the breadth of her shoulder correctly. One thing that this shirt pattern isn't is tight, and that's because it's got about 5 to 6 inches of ease in that whole bust line area. But if in fact, for whatever reason, this space across here is too tight on your body when you are reaching your arms forward, you're going to do exactly the opposite of what I did for the scooping of the armhole. You will have somebody measure from arm crease to arm crease on the back of your body. And let's say that that measurement came out to, let's just say it was 17 inches across. We typically reach forward. We don't typically reach backward. So because we reach forward, just think of yourself holding groceries or driving a car and both your hands are on the steering wheel. Whatever your back width measurement is from arm crease to arm crease, add at least 1 inch more so that you're getting yourself that required reach room. Then let's say it's 18 inches. You're going to fold your tape measure in half, which is 9 inches. And sorry, everybody, I know I'm working in inches. I have sorely forgotten what the metric equivalent is to that, but I think you'll get the idea. And then you would measure on your pattern, and from center back to where the armhole is would need to measure at least 9 inches across. And if you do need to add more width to the back of the pattern in the armhole area, it is exactly the opposite of scooping the armhole, which we did on the front, which means that you're going to make it be flatter like this. So you're adding width to the back reach of the shirt pattern. Okay, then I got a number of questions on the sleeves. So I'm going to bring over my half scale sleeve pattern here. Let me just set these right there. And the sleeve, for some people, they find it too wide. And again, some people, again, I say they find it too wide, but it's all personal preference, isn't it? Because this whole shirt pattern is supposed to be bigger than the dress pattern. It's supposed to be looser, a considerably more casual fit on your body. But that doesn't mean that you might not have very thin arms. And maybe this shirt sleeve pattern is too big or feels too big for you. So how can you change that? Well, you can just simply slim the side area down. So let me get my designing stylus here. And let me just say I'm going to bring the arm in on this half scale pattern. I'll bring it in about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to then go from the underarm point like this, and again, we're picking this up on our overhead camera so that you should be able to see exactly what I'm doing here. And you can take that and just simply narrow your sleeve pattern. So that's one way to do it. Now, another way to do this is to say, I would like to narrow this whole distance right in here, and I'll just use a different color of pencil. Well, yes, you definitely can come down 1 or 2 dots at the underarm, and that is obviously, if I draw this in green and I take this all the way down, you can see that that's taking in the entire sleeve all the way down on both sides. But I want you to watch what happened in doing that. If I do this on both sides and reduce the underarm point by 1 or 2 dots, when I look at these back and front patterns, it also means that I'm going to have to reduce the underarm width 1 or 2 dots. Because if I don't, then this distance is going to get shorter in the cap. And you need to have that ease on the top of the cap in order for it to sit in there nicely. Now, another question I got was, is there another way to reduce the amount of width across the bottom of the sleeve? And yes, there is, and I'm going to draw this one for you and actually show you the actual design of this. So we're just going to say, I'm going to make this a short sleeve. We'll pull the line up here, and I'll take a line going right across there. And, excuse me, then I'm going to put 3 slash lines on this sleeve pattern. One that is parallel to the straight of grain. I'm going to do another one straight up to the sleeve cap, and then approximately the same distance over, I will make another parallel line to the grain line. And then I'm going to cut across, whoops, I just lost my rotary cutter there. I'm going to cut across on the bottom like that, and I'll remove that piece of the sleeve. And then I need to use my sleeve cap as a pivot point. So I'm just going to remove the top of the cap like that. And now, because I will have 3 pivot points on the sleeve cap, let me just put a little piece of tape on each of these pivot points like this, and I need to cut down to the pivot points, which will be right there. And then I need to cut all the way down to the hemline. So remember, what I'm showing you here is just an alternative way to reduce the circumference of the hem so that the sleeve doesn't feel quite so big. And then you can overlap. I'm just going to overlap about 1/4 of an inch on this half scale pattern. But you can see what's happening here is that I'm bringing the whole width of the circumference of the sleeve in like this. Now, you'll also notice that in doing that, it curved the hem. So you would lay a piece of tracing vellum behind there, and you would straighten that hem allowance out at the bottom. So that's another way to reduce the width of the sleeve. But you can see what I've done in this casual swing jacket, and I basically taught you how to do that in the designing lesson, and I really hope you enjoyed that. It was fun for me to do that for you, but you can see that you've got alternatives. So if you think the sleeve is too big, make it smaller. Just be aware of the effect at the underarm if you bring in the underarm points, because you would need to do that same thing on the back and the front. But again, you've got enough ease in this shirt pattern in order to do that. Now, my production team has passed on a couple of questions that came up during the broadcast that I would just like to answer. And one came from Hillary, and she said she didn't understand why the neck size is affecting the height of the sleeve cap. And so for anybody else that was perhaps a little bit of a confusing issue for you, please think back to the beginning of the broadcast when I showed you how to measure your neck, how to add a finger for ease, and then how to compare that to the chart that's on page 6 in the shirt instruction book. If your neck is particularly small compared to your regular chest measurement, then you do need to go down a dot or two on the actual pattern. I'll just do that over here on this half scale pattern. But let's say that your bust circumference was 40 inches around, but you needed to go down to a 38 dot. So you'd be using the 38 dot, which represents a chest 38. So you'd be using the 38 dot there and there. And then, of course, you'd use your stylus to connect it all together. Now, what that has done at the arm side is it's changed the length of the arm side. And that is why when you get to the sleeve pattern, if you changed your neck circumference dot, which is represented by your chest measurement, that you must then go down to the smaller dot at the sleeve cap, as I showed in the demonstration, but go out to your wider number 40 at the bottom. And I hope that explanation didn't add more confusion. It's a little bit hard to get your head around, but that neck circumference doesn't have its own dot on the master pattern, and that's why we have to use our chest measurement or a bust circumference measurement in order to mark the dots at the neck position on both the front and the back pattern. And so that needs to be correlated over to the sleeve pattern when you're drawing off that sleeve cap. And then Jan Simpson asked a question, do I need to adjust the sleeve cap if I reduce the width of the shoulder? So I'll just use a different color here, and let's just say, Jan, that your shoulder position needed to come in to that green mark that I've got on this half scale pattern. And so what that means is you would have taken your designing stylus and you would have blended like this for your narrower shoulder width. Excuse me while I take a sip of water here. Okay, so what did that do in making yourself a narrower shoulder? It did lengthen the arm side. There is no doubt about that. And so the question you asked is, Jan, does it affect my sleeve pattern? And the answer is maybe. Maybe it did. And on page, let me just check here real quickly. Page 10 of your shirt instruction book, it's number 16, and it's all on drawing that sleeve. One of the things that it says to do there, it says, when the cap is drawn, measure the stitching line of the cap and compare that length to the front and back arm side. So if you have then measured your cap height and length, and if you need to modify it, then you will know that. Because if you've ended up with too much or too little ease, then you have to start modifying it. In this case, your armhole may have gotten a little bit longer, and so in the case of the sleeve, you may need to add a little bit at the underarm, just to make sure that you've got the appropriate amount of ease in comparison to your armhole. So those were excellent questions. So now let me go to the chat here, the chat window, and let's see if I have any other questions that I need to answer. Lynette Parker, if you have a rounded back, do you need to make the same adjustments as done on the dress pattern? And Lynette, excellent question, and the answer is yes. If you've made a 1, 2, 3-inch change on the back of your dress pattern, just depending on how rounded your back is, very definitely go ahead and make that change on the shirt pattern. Inevitably, you are going to need it. If you've added a shoulder dart at the back of your dress kit pattern, please go ahead and add the shoulder dart on the shirt pattern as well. You will get a much superior fit in the back of your shirt sleeve. There is one exception, and that's the angle and slope of the shoulder line. The angle and slope of the shoulder line in the shirt kit is a little bit different from that in the dress kit pattern. So in that circumstance, if in your dress kit, if you happen to angle or do a forward thrusted shoulder bone position or move the shoulder seam forward, I would not automatically go ahead and do that on the shirt pattern. Do a test first and see how you like the fit of it, and then evaluate your shoulder position and if you need to do any other modifications to the shoulder seam line. Let's see here. Okay, this one is from Carrie Davis. Let me just see if I can understand this question. My back neck curve is very shallow and the front needs to be longer and the back shorter. Can you tell me how to make the changes for the sleeve? Well, if it's the back neck curve, if the back neck curve needs to be shorter, I would think that you're making the neck curve smaller, and you might be doing that by putting a dart in the neck curve. And I don't know that that's going to affect your sleeve pattern at all, unless I am misinterpreting your question. So Carrie, what I would recommend is that you get to Martha on that question. And if Martha needs any help, then please make sure that, Martha, that you contact me and we will sort out Carrie's question. It was another question that came in previously from an Australian customer, and it was Susan from Australia, and she said, I have a 3rd edition shirt kit. Can I just get the new instruction book? And unfortunately, no, you can't do that. At least I highly recommend against it. And the reason is that in 2015, we modified the shirt pattern substantially. The ease between the front and back got redistributed, and all of the seam allowances were removed so that the shirt would be similar to the dress, the pant, and the children's, which is you draw off your blueprint and then you add your seam allowances. And then the other thing that I added was the hem allowances for both men and women. So the shirt pattern today in our 5th edition shirt is very dissimilar to your old shirt pattern. Therefore, the instruction book today does not apply to the current shirt pattern or to your older shirt pattern. So it's best just to get a whole new kit. Let's see if I have any other questions here that I can deal with. Oh, Trixie Belden asked the question, in the case of upsizing one dot on the shirt front and downsizing one dot on the shirt back to cater to a wider, fuller front body compared to the back, what changes, if any, are necessary on the sleeve cap? Excellent question, Trixie. And if you've gone up a size in the front, the underarm of the front must also go up one size. And you came down one size in the back, so you must go down one size on the back of the underarm of the sleeve pattern. So the two need to be consistent, otherwise the sleeve isn't going to hang in there properly. Oh, that's an interesting question from Anne Marie. Glenda, I don't have a cover stitch machine. Neither did I for about 60 years, Anne Marie, and I did lots of sewing without it. Do I stitch the front then with a stretch stitch if I use a knit fabric? You must be meaning this casual swing jacket. Yes, I would definitely use a stretch stitch, absolutely. You don't need to have a cover stitch machine to sew with knits. It's absolutely a fabulous machine to have, but you certainly don't have to have one. And Kay said, sorry, I missed the web address for Elsa B's SureFit Academy. Could it please be repeated? Yes, definitely. It's surefitacademysa.com. The only difference between her academy and the US Academy is that she's added the SA on for South Africa. So you're going to go there and you're going to see all of her current design and sew-alongs. We are so delighted that Elsa B is doing these design and sew-alongs. It takes the pressure off of my back, and she's doing some absolutely great designs that I would never think of doing. So we are absolutely delighted, and please take advantage of her academy, because she's got some really, really fun designs going in there. And her goal is to do them once a month. Oh my gosh, I think that's a very aggressive goal, and all power to her, because I know I couldn't keep up with one a month. Okay, I will just say, are there any other questions here? Because I think we are coming to the end of the broadcast. I can't see any other questions in the chat window that haven't been answered. So let me just say a big thank you to all of you. Please keep in mind that you have unlimited viewing in this broadcast. The broadcast is going to be up in YouTube on this same link that you came in and viewed it tonight up until October the 31st. At that point, the whole broadcast is going to move over into the USA Academy. So it's going to move over to surefitacademy.com. And there, in that last week in October, myself, as well as Martha, is going to send out a newsletter to you giving you the 100% discount code. So you'll be able to watch it in the Academy at your leisure for no additional cost. And we just wanted to do that to make it really, really easy for you. So I hope that you all have an Academy account now. And then I would also like to ask you that if you're new, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. The link is directly below there. It helps our algorithms in the YouTube, whatever it is that they do that gives you higher ranking and status. So we appreciate you subscribing to SureFit Designs. And then the other thing is you might want to mark your calendars for the next live event. It's going to be totally free. It's going to be on necklines, and it's going to be October the 23rd. Now, unfortunately, it's going to be at 11 o'clock in the morning here in the United States in our area, which is Idaho, which means that many of you are going to be sound asleep and getting your beauty sleep. Likely about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning is when it'll come across over into Australia and New Zealand and all of Southeast Asia. So you'll have something to look forward to when you wake up in the morning. There'll be a new free live chat there for you on October the 24th for you. Again, thank you so much for participating, and I wish you the most success with your SureFit Designs projects, and have a lot of fun working with your shirt kit.